I'm Dr. Katie from ScribeNote, and today we have another episode of What's Up Doc. Today I have a really special guest with me. He's actually an influencer and a DVM. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Juan Sebastian Orjuela, otherwise known as Juancho.dvm on Instagram. I'm originally from Bogota, Colombia. I grew up in the States and I attended the Ontario Veterinary College. I graduated in 2022 and I currently practice emergency medicine in London, Ontario. So thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we're so excited that you're here today. I think there's a few things we will definitely jump into over the course of the episode. But the first, I'm very interested in how you became a content creator. Like, such a cool avenue when you're a veterinarian.
Absolutely. This journey actually started quite before I entered veterinary school and started in the journey of becoming a veterinarian. During my undergrad in UW Milwaukee, I started the first pre-veterinary club
Okay.
that university has ever had. For me, it was to kind of just get like-minded people to go through the process of learning about how to get into vet school and what that takes. So for me at that time, I was always big into social media, and I noticed that there was nobody that looked like me, talked like me, or was from my background that was on social media that was kind of, representing, inspiring me, or kind of guiding me to get the resources that I needed to get the process started. So when I noticed that, I decided to start sharing my journey as a pre-veterinary student. I started working in an emergency hospital as a veterinary assistant, and I shared cases, I shared what I could. And from that, it kind of just took off. So went through the university process, worked in a variety of clinics, and slowly but surely, I started kind of building this community of people that saw me as somebody that was creating visibility for the Latino community in veterinary medicine, and helped inspire some people to kind of find their way to becoming veterinarians or to entering the profession. So for me, it's been a long journey. By no means do I have like this crazy following, but for me, it was never about becoming famous or anything like that. It was all about sharing my journey, getting people interested in what I was doing, and kind of showing people that there's hope for themselves to, if they wanted to get into this profession or become a veterinarian.
Yeah, which is super authentic, right? Like, I think, nowadays it's hard to know, right? Whether people get into it for the followers or for the content itself, right? And it sounds like you were the latter, which is amazing.
Yeah,
And super nice to be able to inspire the next generations.
absolutely.
Which I think you also do a lot of in your community outreach. I've seen that you've worked with some kids, like programs with kids.
Yep.
Maybe tell us a bit about those.
Yeah, so I work with the Companion Project in the States. A lot of nonprofit organizations that do spay and neuter clinics, or like vaccine clinics around North America. I've done some clinics in Mexico and other countries, and it's just really something that I'm truly passionate about. I think for me, I've been always a community-based individual. As an immigrant, I've always felt like I needed a community, and when I came into the veterinary profession, it was really important for me to form and establish a community that supported me, but supported others, and where we felt like we belonged, right? So as far as community outreach, I love educating pet parents. I love educating the next generation of potential veterinary professionals, and it just fills my cup to be able to do that.
Yeah.
As an emergency veterinarian, costs are very high. The emotional kind of involvement from that specific subset of the profession is really high. So being able to take time away from work and give back to the community to give a peace of mind to pet parents without them having to worry about the cost of things, or feeling judged, it just fills my cup. It kind of brings me the joy back and kind of reminds me as to why I became a veterinarian and why I entered this profession. So I'm just really passionate about it,
That's
and
amazing.
I just think the impact that it has on so many people and just a community in general is just huge.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, right? Like, you really need to have something in this profession that like reminds you why you did it in the first place, because you can get super bogged down on those really busy shifts, like where you've got like a billion sick things and no one can afford to do anything. Like, it's so challenging. And like, that's the thing about this job is like, it's not, there are so many different facets to why it's challenging, right? Like, you're dealing with like complex medical processes and costs and emotion and family members, right? And yeah, having something that you can just use to bring yourself back to life kind of in between shifts is really nice, right? The thing that I think I wanted to, like, I think I saw you did recently, maybe it was in Toronto. I'm not sure if they're always in Canada, but it's like you had the little kids and then you taught them stuff about vet med. Like, what was that about?
Yeah, so I also work with Blend Vet. It's
Blend
an
vet.
Yep. It's an organization based out of the States, and the co-founder of it is a good friend of mine. I think that when I co-founded the Latinx Veterinary Medical Association, kind of entered this realm of veterinary professionals that were looking to do something different for the profession as far as like increasing the amount of DEI and kind of making it more accessible for people in underrepresented communities. So she had her first event in Toronto
Yeah.
a few months ago and asked me to be part of it. And it was such an impactful experience. We went to a local high school, predominantly more minority-based population of students, and we introduced them to veterinary medicine. So we did stations on surgery, client communication, large animal, pathology. I could go on and on as to like the amount of things that were provided to these students. And it was pretty much just an educational approach to be able to gauge their interests and to allow them to see veterinary medicine as a potential career path for them in the future. So again, if I had that at that age, it would have had a tremendous impact on my experience.
Hmm.
When I kind of started down the path of wanting to become a veterinarian, I felt very alone, right? There was nobody that I could look up to, nobody that I could relate to be able to give me that hope and that guidance as to how I can get started. So it took me just doing it on my own, which made it a bit harder. So programs like this are allowing students and kids to be able to enter these pathways with support and resources,
Yeah.
which hopefully will make it easier for them to one day enter the profession or become veterinarians of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think it's so important to kind of, have it available for students to understand like the reality of it, right? Because there's like, the Instagram of it, which is like the puppies and kittens and like having fun and like, getting to pet them and whatever all day, but there's so much more to it, right? And
Absolutely.
and I think, the sooner we introduce kids to the reality of it, like then they'll be able to make informed decisions.
Absolutely.
And it really sounds like you've created this community where like, there's not so many barriers to potentially being involved and like learning about it, which is amazing.
Absolutely. It's all about facilitating kind of the ability to kind of, have set some goals and reach those goals as somebody that doesn't have access to that education or that family kind of influence, right? I mean, you see
Yeah.
a lot of people that go to veterinary schools, their grandparents, their uncles, a lot of people that have generational kind of lineage in veterinary medicine.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, for a lot of people that don't have that, it seems like almost an impossible thing to
for sure.
accomplish.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean that kind of ties right into your creation of the LVMA, which you
Yeah.
kind of briefly mentioned.
Yeah.
How long ago was that? And tell us about the LVMA.
Yeah, so the LVMA I co-founded in 2020. So right before the pandemic hit, it came about as an idea with another veterinary student from Cornell University. Obviously, through social media, again, I formed this community of people that we were like-minded and come from different or similar backgrounds and different backgrounds. But we noticed that there was a gap in representation of Latino veterinarians in North America. So there was already associations formed like the Black DVM network, for example. And in the United States, there's a higher population of Latinos in veterinary medicine compared to Canada. But in the time that I was a student, I was one of like two Latinos at OVC. So, I mean, there was still a huge need here. So we decided to start it as almost like a club. And this club ended up kind of having a big spotlight shown on it when COVID happened and the talk of DEI in veterinary medicine started occurring. So when all this, human rights kind of discussions surrounding our profession, began, major organizations like the AVMA and major companies like Hills and Zoetis noticed that we had a presence. We started just as an Instagram page, and all of a sudden we had all this attention and all these people reaching out to us saying, listen, you're the only representative body for Latinos in veterinary medicine. There's no other organizations that are doing what you're doing. So right from then, I was a second-year vet student.
Wow.
And
It was COVID.
yeah, and it was COVID. And, like they don't give us any education onto how to start a nonprofit organization
Yeah.
or kind of how to navigate that. And as a student, you ask yourself, like, who am I to be able to do this, right?
Yes, that imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
right? That I feel like we still have after school.
Absolutely. Oh my God, it never ends. But it's learning how to manage it, I think, as we get older in this profession and more experience.
Yeah.
But we decided to create a board of directors. We decided to go through the process of establishing as a nonprofit organization.
Wow.
So 501c3 in the United States. We're not certified in Canada, but we kind of focus on the US because again, there's a higher population
Yep.
of Latinos there. And then we started working with different companies to obtain sponsorships, partnerships. We were able to provide pre-veterinary students and veterinary students with significant stipends to go through veterinary school. We made those scholarships less competitive because, as you know, when they release scholarships, it's very competitive in veterinary medicine. And so we made it specifically for Latino veterinary students that wanted to kind of some acceleration in their professional journey, and we made that available to them. We now have about 22 student chapters established in all different vet schools in the US. There's not one in Canada yet because, again, Canada, there's 5 vet schools, and there's not much of a need here, but I think that there is still a need, absolutely. So I think eventually, hopefully, we have a chapter in Canada, but pretty much these are all student-led chapters. They have their own governing body. Obviously, the LVMA oversees all the student chapters. We provide funding for them every year, and they host different events like lunch talks where they bring in Latino veterinarians or veterinary technicians or assistants to come and talk and educate them on kind of the impact that we have in the profession. And yeah, Hispanic Heritage Month just happened, so we're obviously doing a lot for that and have a huge presence. And it's a little about visibility and representation to, again, inspire those people, those kids that are watching what we're doing, and give them some hope that there's a place for them in this profession.
Yeah, that's amazing. How many members do you have?
Oh boy. So I would say the members in the United States, so we represent the US, parts of the Caribbean, and obviously Canada. Membership, I would say it's about like 2,000. Yeah, but through the veterinary schools and the student chapters, we have tons more.
Yeah.
Right. So membership is mostly for like paid veterinarians once they graduate. But and the payments that they make is to help us fund different support resources that we have for students. We do a lot of mentorship as well. So it's still growing. The nonprofit organization, obviously, you need to pass it down for it to flourish. So I'm not in the board anymore, but I'll always be a co-founder, and I'll always be like would always have a special place in my heart because it's something that I'm very passionate about. So I'm involved for sure, but as far as sitting in the board, you have to let it grow. Pass down the torch, as they say.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. That is that's incredible. I'm so glad that there is that available now, and that it's taken off. It's such a crazy, that's not even 5 years, like 5-ish years ago, right?
Yeah, it's crazy how time flies, and how a small idea can have such a great impact.
Yeah.
And I think this is a lesson for any veterinary student or anybody that's in our profession, that when you think you can't do something, your biggest barrier is yourself.
Yeah.
And listening and comparing yourself to other people, it's never gonna work in your favor. So always trusting your gut and knowing that if you really have a great idea and you're passionate about it, that no matter what anybody says, you can accomplish it. Because having a DVM is like it's like having a ticket to doing a lot of different things, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Our profession is not linear. There's many avenues that we can take, and I think that that is a strong realization people have after they leave veterinary school. But in veterinary school, you're very much just focused on like, how am I going to be the best veterinarian? You know, how am I going to remember all this information?
Yeah.
And then when reality hits, then you're like, wow, I have so many things that I can do,
Yeah.
and so much impact that I can have.
For sure.
So, and this community is tiny, but yet really big at the same time.
Yes.
So, again, there's so much support and so many people out there that are going to support anybody that has a good idea that's going to have a good impact, and to try to better veterinary medicine in our profession.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. And I totally agree. It's like such a weird, yeah, it's very, very small. Like you run into people in many different places, and then it's like, wow, what a small world. But it's also, there are so many things you can do with it, which is so, so cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, like a really, really great stepping stone to the many different things outside of practice. And you, I mean, obviously have your foot in the door of many different things, but you also are an ER vet.
Yep.
And I like, kudos to you. That is a huge, I've done a handful of ER shifts. I don't know that I could do it full time. It is like pretty exhausting, pretty long shifts, eh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's for sure. It can go, past 14 hours. I've done 18-hour shifts.
Ugh.
But at the end of the day, I think to be an ER vet, you have to have pretty solid boundaries, and a good understanding of where you're gonna exceed what you can do, right?
Yep.
So at the end of the day, those long shifts are hard and mentally exhausting, but it's the most rewarding you will ever feel, because you spend so many hours dedicating to helping people and their pets in their worst moments.
Yeah.
So I work 2 to 3 days a week because of it. Usually do 12+ hour shifts.
Yeah.
And we do a variety of things, and I love the aspect of emergency medicine that I don't know what's coming through the door, and the fact that I can stabilize a patient and provide the care they need with the ability to have a huge impact on that individual's life, on the pet parent's life, right? I think there's a lot going on right now in veterinary medicine with the price of things,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the most taxing part of being an emergency veterinarian.
Yeah.
The cost of care has gone up, and it's because we now provide gold standard medicine.
Yeah.
Right. So, but back in the day when things used to be a lot cheaper, we didn't do all the proper steps, because our information base has grown so drastically that we now have the ability to provide different options to refer out. But with the economy right now, it makes it really difficult. And unfortunately, a lot of what I do ends up being in humane euthanasia because of the cost of care.
Yep.
But I have, like I said, a really special place in my heart for community medicine and understanding people that come from unprivileged backgrounds.
Yeah.
And I always try to provide as many options as I can. Obviously, gold standard's always there, but I'm realistic, and I know that that may dissuade some people from even trying.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to read the room when you go into
100%.
and providing resources and saying like, this veterinarian, will I be able to do the surgery if needed for half the price that I can, but your dog is stable enough to wait a day or two. Then I think that that's having compassion, not only for the pet but also for their family member.
Yeah.
And that's really important to know. Right?
Yeah, for sure. I 100% agree with you. The area I work in is fairly low income as well. And so even though it's general practice, like I deal with that a lot as well on the day to day, and it can become, you're right, like a super taxing part of it, right? And instead of only having your sights set on gold standard, the practical approach to treatment is, I think, like, people really appreciate it. You get way less, combativeness, like way less. People complaining afterwards if you just take the time to partner with them and understand, like, meet them where they're at, right? Not like offer them something that there's no way they could afford, and then they end up feeling guilty even though you didn't mean to, right? It's very complex. But I'm really glad to hear that as an ER vet, like, you're also doing that, because I think ER can be really challenging. It's such a high stakes, and people are not always they're not their best selves necessarily, right, in those stressful situations. So really important to be so empathetic.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to put yourself in the client's shoes, right?
Yeah.
If my dog was actively dying, I would be a hot mess, and I would be going into that clinic freaking out,
Yeah.
and just knowing that like how your reaction would be in that such scenario or situation gives you a lot of ability to be able to talk to a client
Mhm.
in a compassionate manner and kind of make it so you can avoid any negative interactions or
Mhm.
situations and try to calm them as much as possible.
For sure.
Right.
Did you start right from vet school? Did you go right into ER?
No, I actually,
Okay, okay.
yeah, I did GP
Good.
for a bit, and I think it was a great idea to do that. Right, I did consider going directly into emergency, but GP really gave me a strong foundation and a
Mhm.
basis of still like understanding my medicine,
Yeah.
and kind of those disease processes that we see commonly.
Yeah.
And coming into emergency, you know, I was very afraid of it because you know
It's
everybody in your
scary.
professions, yeah, says how scary and taxing it is, but I think it's mostly imposter syndrome. I say, you know, if you're a veterinarian and you do GP, you can easily do emergency medicine. Now, there's different personalities, right, that can't because it is a high stressful environment, and you do see the worst case scenarios.
Mhm.
But being able to understand that, you know, you're there to help, and if there's a need of veterinarians that nobody has the ability to get to, right, you're at least giving somebody some solace that their pets are going to be well taken care of.
Yeah.
In my emergency hospital, I have a great team of veterinarians that I work with. We always discuss every case. Anytime I have a question, we look at x-rays together, blood work, and everybody gives their opinion, which makes it, you know, it's a collaborative environment, which makes it inherently that we can all provide the best medicine that we can.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
So it's less scary for anybody that out there thinking that, you know, emergency is not for them because they think that they're just going to be thrown in a pit and just kind of to fend for themselves.
Mhm.
You know, it really depends on the hospital, but certainly there are those hospitals out there where there is a great team environment, and you will be able to do your job as an emergency veterinarian, and you will be able to grow and just become better every single day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's a super good point. If you're looking to get into it, to make sure that it's a team kind of before you're thrown into the deep end, or yeah, I think that's totally a really good point. Few shifts that I've done have been solo, which are stressful, right, in themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, like working with a team is always better. Even in general practice, I find like it's so nice to just bounce ideas off a colleague and just be like, hey, like, am I thinking about this the right way? So that doesn't make you any less of a vet, and I think
Yeah.
that's the thing that, like, a lot of newer graduates and I mean, you're still technically fairly new
Yes.
yourself, but for myself, you know, like, I graduated in 2016, like, it doesn't make you any less, like, that's just learning. It's part of,
It's part of it.
the doctors I work with that are, closer to retirement age ask stuff from me all the time, right? It's just yeah, it's just improving the way you provide
Absolutely.
medicine, yeah.
There are tons of students that come in and ask me questions where I'm like, oh gosh, I should know this, but you know, like let me just look it up and get back to you. And
Yeah.
sometimes they know more information than you do because
Yeah.
you've been out of school for so long. But that's the beauty in it. And instead of thinking it as a negative for yourself, think of it as an opportunity to be able to go back and understand what the question was. And then
Mhm.
that way it's only going to make you a better veterinarian.
Yeah, for sure.
So being able to not keep everything in. If you don't know something, ask,
Yeah.
right? Because that's when the complications happens. That's when the complaints happen. So if you're trying to like check off all your boxes, ask your mentors, ask the people, you know, even if you're a solo practitioner, text any of your mentors, text any other veterinarians that you
Mhm.
may know and ask for an opinion. And I find that most veterinarians are open to giving advice
Yeah.
and walking through cases with you,
Those
right?
internal
Yeah.
consults.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm spoiled because in my emergency hospital, we're a referral too. So we
Oh,
have
nice.
neurology, we have internal medicine, and then we have soft tissue and orthopedic surgery, as in addition to the emergency department. So I get to consult with a variety of veterinarians regarding cases, and I can do internal transfers, which is fantastic, right? So
Yeah.
if
It's
you're
really
just
nice.
ER only or urgent care, I can see how that could be a bit overwhelming. But just know that there's resources like IDEX or Zoetis where you can go
Yeah.
and have those consults, and it gives you
Yes.
some peace of mind.
So true, so true, and I guess, like, the ER is kind of, I mean, in a similar strain to, you also are very interested in exotics. So like another thing that not very many people do. Tell me about like how you got into that. And, I know you have a lot of exotic pets yourself now. Yeah. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so when I got into vet school, my ideal situation was that I was gonna either do One Health work, so public health,
Oh,
or exotic animal medicine.
okay.
So obviously, being from Colombia, when I was a child, I saw many exotic animals. My grandma had a parrot. I had a bunch of lizards and parakeets and stuff like that. So I just always had a special bond with exotic animals.
Mhm.
When I got into vet school, that flame kind of just diminished because everybody would say, "Oh, to be an exotic veterinarian, you have to like wait until somebody dies in like in a zoo, for example, to be able to inherit a job in a zoo, or you don't get paid enough, and the debt to income ratio for a veterinarian is huge."
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my god, and I was an international student, so
Right.
my debt is a lot higher than most, I would say.
Mhm.
So it kind of dissuaded me from wanting to pursue exotic animal medicine, but I've always had a huge interest in it. Now, after I moved to London, Ontario, I did an externship with one of the only exotic animal vets, Dr. Sean Tucker, and quickly became my mentor. Right? He's very knowledgeable. He's self-taught, and I just love that rotation. He ended up selling his practice, and I was like locuming around. So that really exposed me to kind of reignite my fire for the love of exotic animals and the medicine that comes with it.
So
But
this is general practice, right?
no
Yeah.
practice. Yep, yep. But during COVID, he ended up selling his practice and sold it to a corporation which dissolved the exotic animal, the medicine part of it,
Right.
because it wasn't profitable enough.
Yeah. It's a hard one, right?
Yeah.
People don't really necessarily want to spend the funds on exotic pets.
Yeah.
Not always.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but
Not
not
always.
always.
But it's really interesting because in emergency, I see exotic pets, but it's always for a humane euthanasia, right?
Yeah.
I'm not proficient enough to be like, listen, I'm gonna save your bird in an emergency situation. We don't have the equipment for that.
Yeah.
We're not set up. So it's unfortunate, but I do see exotics. But, in the worst case scenario, when he closed or when his sold his practice and they shut up the exotics, there was a huge apparency of these exotic animal pet parents that were willing to go anywhere and pay whatever just to get their animal seen. So, you said that, a lot of people are not going to pay, a surgery for their hamster when they could get a new one at the store. But I think the mentality on that is changing with pet parents.
Yeah.
And you find that some of the most grateful pet parents are exotic animal pet parents.
Right.
They're just like grateful that you are there, even trying.
Right.
So now that I've seen like this huge gap in London where I live, I've considered, if I ever open my own practice to see exotics, I have a mentor that has seen them and he's willing to help me through that process. And I just feel like anything else in veterinary medicine, like when I was in GP, I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do emergency medicine because I'm not proficient. I ended up doing it, and just like anything else, you learn it by doing it, and you may not be perfect, and it may take you a long time to be an expert, right? But it's worth the try, right?
Right.
And it's worth a try because you're going to service such a underrepresented community of people and pets in our area, because there's nobody to kind of give you proper advice on their medical care.
Yeah, for sure. I saw some exotics in my first job, and then like I saw some backyard poultry and stuff when I was mobile. But I always felt like, you just need so much, different medication, different setup, different handling techniques. So if you're gonna do it, you want to do it right, especially because of the cost, right? So that was always like, I know there's a handful of GP clinics like close-ish, and there's just not enough. You're right,
Yeah.
like not enough, and it's too bad that it's just not as accessible. So that would be great. You said you're thinking about potentially opening a clinic with exotics. I think
Yeah.
sure everybody in London would be super happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. Again, I'm all about filling those gaps whenever I see them, right? And I did
Yeah.
with the LVMA, and now this exotic kind of. I would do GP with dogs and cats as well.
Yeah.
And I would love to do like community medicine on top of that, where I give back to the community in London by providing, spay and neuter clinics or free vaccines and prevention. That's kind of my dream, right? I'm all about
Yeah.
helping and educating people. But I guess to get me started in the exotics journey, in the last year I started my own reef tank, right? A saltwater reef
Oh,
tank.
so
So I've been
cool.
nerding out over that. And I've been learning lots, right? And there's in London, there's surprisingly a huge exotic animal kind of population of people that just have like fish and birds and all of these kinds of animals that kind of is pushing me to want to learn more.
Yeah.
And then I'm waiting to get a little baby conure that I got for my
Ah,
birthday.
nice.
So I get to kind of play around with my conure, train it, and then kind of understand birds more in a deeper level.
Yeah.
So then that way, when I do decide to open something and I do decide to see these exotic animal patients, birds are usually bread and butter.
Yes.
I would be able to have kind of more experience and background with my personal animals.
For sure.
Yeah, so I'm seeing it as an opportunity. I told my husband, I'm like, it's a market research opportunity.
You're going to make yourself a subject matter expert just by owning all the different exotics. You need a bigger house for more cages, right?
100%.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. I have never had an exotic pet, but yeah, like I said, when I saw them for a bit, like I thought they were they're so cool. Like they're just so unique.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but then again, like it takes a special person to learn all about all those things. So
Absolutely.
good for you.
Yeah,
That's
no.
amazing.
And again, it's not a marathon, or it's a marathon, but
Yes,
like
not a
it's
sprint.
not a
Yeah.
sprint. So I'm well aware of that, and I know that by no means, even by the time I open a practice, I think that I'm not going to be nowhere near a place where I can say that I'm an expert. I don't think none of us can ever say we're
No, not
experts,
ever.
because in this
No.
profession, right? Like
Yes.
you're always constantly learning.
Yeah.
So again, I just hope to fill this gap and help as much as I can. And hopefully
Yeah.
with my mentorship, with mentors I do have, I'll be able to make a difference. And
Well, I think so.
that's hopefully what will happen, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think it sounds like you've already made quite a difference in the 3 and a bit years you've been out of school. Like, already started a nonprofit for the LVMA, done a ton of community outreach, done GP, done ER, interested in exotics. Like, come on, what haven't you done? And you're super popular on Instagram,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
Aw.
I think that everybody that is listening today is going to be super happy to have heard some of your perspectives, and I hope that we can have more vets in the future kind of do more and try and progress the profession forward, because it is a pretty amazing one.
It is. I think it's the best profession in the world. So, I think there's a lot of burnout in our profession, but I think there's so many things that you can do. Like we talked about earlier, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
The amount of impact you can have is endless. Again, we're small enough that you can really stand out.
Yeah.
I always encourage people, like, listen, go. Social media is the future, right? And as you know, you're very much an AI individual since you co-founded Scribe Note. That technology is really going to have a tremendous impact in our profession.
Yeah.
Already is. And pet parents are now, the majority of them are millennials and Gen Zs, which are going to rely on social media to educate themselves. I think that veterinarians being in the public eye is better than no veterinarians, and the people that are misinforming a lot of pet parents, right? I think that we should be the ones in the forefront,
For sure.
educating, giving advice, and inspiring the next generation. And so I always encourage people, jump on social media, obviously for the right reasons. Don't go in it to just try to become famous and try to just make money and all that stuff. Go in it because you do want to make a difference, and you do want to help people, right, in different ways. There's always room for making fun of yourself or making fun of our profession, because there's so many possibilities when you're working with animals, and that's great. But always, for me at least, I always have the community in mind. I always have the type of impact I'm going to have in mind, and how I can better this profession. So I always encourage people.
Yeah, well, amazing. Well, definitely, I hope everyone who's listening takes that to heart. And I think it would be really nice if more people have the same viewpoints. So yeah, it was super nice to chat with you today. And thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time on What's Up Doc.
Thank you for having me.